Last week we did kindness, and this week we shall be looking at goodness. Goodness is a quality that we should all have. Goodness is a quality that we should all have. Goodness is about being morally and ethically good. And I would say, if we will go back to the beginning, to the very beginning, when God created the world, or when God created us, the Bible tells us that God created all things. When God created all things, and He said, everything is good. Not only that, God made us in His likeness and image. If God made all things good, how come we see things have gone bad over the years, ever since God created the world? And we look around us today, we see this is bad, this is not good, this is evil. Why do we have all these things? Because in the beginning, God created all things beautiful. He created all things good. He created man. He created Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It was a beautiful garden. Everything was good. So what happened? Why are we in the situation where we are now? We see things are evil, things are bad, things are not the way God wanted them to be. So we need to kind of dig into things and see what actually went wrong. While Adam and Eve were in this beautiful Garden of Eden where everything was good and their life was good, everything was good, there was no evil, there was nothing bad. And then God gave them instructions on how to live the good life and the good thing that God has given to them. But they decided not to live according to the instructions that God has given to them. The Bible says that they disobeyed God. And that is when things began to go wrong. After they disobeyed God, things began to go wrong. If I go to the car dealer and buy a car, in the car there is a handbook that gives me instructions on how to take care of the car. If the instruction is the car is gasoline, not diesel, and instead of using gasoline, I fill the car with diesel, then something is going to go wrong. That is exactly a kind of example of what Adam and Eve did. God gave them instructions, says, you must not touch this, you must not do this. So the main thing about God's instruction is not that about the fruit or whatever they ate, but it's about not doing what is right or what God told them to do. He is the maker. He is the creator. He told them what to do, and they didn't do that. And that is when things began to go wrong. Now, if we take it a little further, we see that Adam and Eve began to have children. I want us to see how their disobedience affected their children, and what goodness and how evil, bad, from goodness, man began to go into bad things and evil. Let's turn to Genesis chapter 4. I'll read from verse 4. Now, the background is this. Adam and Eve began to have children. We're going to read about this. They began to have children, and the impact of their sin began to come upon their children as well. Now it says, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again a second son, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. So we see Adam and Eve had two children. One was Cain. The first one was Cain, and the second son, his name was Abel. Now the Bible tells us that Abel became jealous of his brother Cain. Cain became jealous of his brother Abel, and when this happened, Cain killed his younger brother. We all know the story. Cain killed his younger brother. So these were the very first, you can say, children of Adam and Eve. Now, what we see is not the goodness of God that God intended man to enjoy in the Garden of Eden. A Garden of Eden. We see that evil and bad things is beginning to take place in the lives of the descendants of Adam, the immediate first generation descendants of Adam and Eve. We see that happening. And so when we look around us today, we see evil here, bad things happening here, bad things happening here. We see jealousy and all kinds of things happening around us. So when we look back, we know that it began. It is not God who began evil or bad things, because the opposite of good or goodness is bad or evil. In Psalms 35, verse 5, the Bible says that the earth is full of God's goodness. The earth is full of God's goodness. So, but how come things are so perverted and things are so going wrong everywhere? It is not God's doing, it is man's doing. And so that's something that we need to realize. But at the same time, we need to know that God, who created all things good, who made us in his own image and likeness, that's what the Bible says. If God made us in his own image, he's a good God. He is good in all his ways. It's so wonderful to know that God did not decide to make us like something else. He made us in his own image and likeness. There are, beautiful animals all over the place. Peacock is so beautiful. Look at the tiger, you look at the lion. They are so majestic and so beautiful. God did not make any of his millions of creations like himself in his own likeness and image. He made us human beings in his likeness and image. Why did he do that? Because he wanted us to demonstrate his goodness to the entire creation, to his entire creation. He wanted us to be people who would demonstrate his goodness, or what God looks like, to his entire creation. So basically, that is something that God wanted to do. And so the Bible tells us that the source of badness, if you like to say that, or evil, is not God. The Bible says all have sinned and come short the glory of God. And that is where the badness or the evil came from. So sin basically perverts and diminishes goodness, or twists the values, or the good values, or the good morals human beings ought to have. Sin is a thing that actually changes all those things. So we must be able to, as human beings, we need to recognize that God wants us to demonstrate his goodness in every area of our lives. And we can be able to demonstrate that we are made in the image and the likeness of God. There is an interesting passage in the Bible, in the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul talks about two people in the church. What amazes me is that Paul was not talking about people outside the church. He was talking about people in the church. I want us to take a look at that in 3 John chapter 9. We'll read from verse 9. But let me read from verse 11 first. Paul says, "Behold, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. He who does good is of God, but he who does evil has not seen God, or has not experienced God." So he says, imitate. If we look around us today, you find that people are more likely to imitate evil than imitate good. You see the celebrities, the musicians, and the movie stars. Those are the people that everyone wants to imitate. People, why do young people today sag their pants? Why do they sag their pants? Do they know the history of, pulling down their pants? Do they know the history? Where is that coming from? Is a bad example that people want to follow. They don't want to follow something good. The history says that actually began in the prisons. The sagging of pants began in the prisons. You know why? Because they're not allowed to use the belt in the prisons. And so they keep their pants sagging. Because most of the time, some prisoner can use the belt to hang themselves. So that's why their pants keep sagging. And so it became a fashion outside the world, and people want to follow that. Now, there are so many other things, that people, try to follow and do things, and that is evil. But the Bible says here, Paul says, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. And then when we read from verse 9. Can you read from verse 9? Paul is talking about two people in the church.
So I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to be first, will have nothing to do with us. So if I come, I will call attention to what he's doing, gossiping maliciously about us. Not satisfied with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. He also stops those who want to do so, and puts them out of the church.
Right. Now let's just, you read verse 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now it says, Paul is writing to the church, to the believers. And it says, there is somebody amongst you. His name is Diotrephes. It says, he loves position and power in the church. He loves politics in the church. This man, he loves politics in the church. He loves to be the main person. He just loves position. In other words, he thinks the church is a political ground, a platform. And then he adds to that, saying to them that this man, Diotrephes, would not welcome the apostles. He doesn't want the apostles to come close because he knows that the apostles was going to tell him the truth and tell him to stop what he's doing. He doesn't want them around. And so Paul says, when I come to you, I will confront him. I will confront him and talk, deal with issues of the thing that he's been doing wrong. And he says there's another thing about this man is that he doesn't want other people who wants to be good in the church. He doesn't want them to be good. If anyone tries to be good, he throws them out. Yeah, that's what Paul writes. Can you read verse 10 again, please?
If I come, I will call attention to what he is doing, gossiping maliciously about us. Not satisfied with that, he refuses to welcome the brothers. He also stops those who want to do so and puts them out of the church.
He puts them out of the church. He puts them out of those who want to be good. He doesn't want that. Can you imagine a person, a human being? You don't want to do good. That's still okay. Not good, but okay. But stopping others and throwing them out of the church is terrible. Other people want to do good, allow them to do the good, but you don't want them to do good. You don't want to do good, and you don't want others to do good, and so you throw them out of the church. And now in verse 11, Paul talks about another man in the same place, in the same church. Can you read verse 11, please?
Dear friend, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. Anyone who does what is good is from God. Anyone who does what is evil has not seen God.
And in verse 12?
Demetrius is well spoken of by everyone.
There's another man, Demetrius. He has a good testimony, yeah?
And even by the truth itself, we also speak well of him. And you know that our testimony is true.
Yeah. So we see there are two, different kinds of people. One is bad and one is good in the same place, in the same location, in the same church. These are the kind of things we have all around us as we live in this world. We have sometimes you can be living in a community, you don't even know who is living close to you, who is living next to you, who is living around you, and things like that. There are some things sometimes we listen to the news and we hear people were shocked that a serial killer is living among them, or rapist is living among them, or some bad fellow is living among them. They are shocked because everything looks normal. And so that's the kind of thing that we read here. And so nothing is really new under the face of the sun. Whatever's happened before will happen again. It will happen tomorrow. Why? Because the element of sin. So this is what we see happening all the time with, and God is saying that is the essence of having the goodness, the fruit of the Spirit in our lives, so we can have that goodness in our lives. Let's take a brief look at the elements, or what are the elements or the characteristics of goodness or a good person. Number one, I would say that good people or a good person is honest and fair or upright. He's honest, fair. People who believe in honesty, it becomes their policy. It's a long time when I've ever heard, the saying that honesty is the best policy. It's something that I heard, I don't know, maybe 30 years or 40 years ago. Honesty is the best policy. So, but these days, I don't hear it anymore. It's not something that is really, common. Those days, I remember it's something that is, you hear very often and people want to live by it. But these days, you don't. Honesty is like, if you're being honest, then you're not smart. If you're being honest, you're not smart. You're not really smart. You don't know what's going on. So you don't need to be honest. So that's the way things seem to operate these days. And when we are honest and fair, we have there will be a good relationship with other people. When there is honesty, there will be a good relationship with other people. One of the things that breaks marriages is dishonesty. It is honesty and lack of fairness. And if there is honesty, there will be a good relationship with friends, with people, in the family, and all that. And so God will consider. We must. One of the questions that we must ask ourselves sometimes is, would God consider what I'm doing to be honest and fair? If I'm doing something, would God consider my actions to be honest and fair? Will I do, when no one is watching me, will I still be honest? If no one is watching or seeing what I'm doing, will I still remain honest or be honest in my deeds? And those are the things that we need to ask ourselves all the time when it comes to honesty. Good people are respectful, they are polite, and they are cautious. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone wants to be respected. Even little kids. They want to be. They deserve to be respected, right? If you don't respect them, especially the little kids, they'll tell you, "Don't disrespect me." They are little kids, but they still want to be respected, which is good. Everyone deserves to be respected because everyone is created in the image and the likeness of God. Whether it's a little kid or older person or an adult, they deserve to be respected. And we need to be polite and cautious to people in every area of our life. Sometimes, as human beings, we have the problem of not respecting people for one reason or the other. So we need to kind of pinch ourselves and say, don't do that. There is, I don't know if you all remember, There is a lady, I think it was 2 years ago. There's a lady during the Britain Got Talent. There's a show on TV called Britain, America Got Talent. And in Britain, they have the same thing. And most of the countries have it too. So there was this lady who came to perform. She was on the show. She was a singer. She was about to sing. When she came on stage, everyone on the crowd, the audience, and also the judges, they've already written her off. Number one, she looks so ugly. She's an Irish lady, but she's fat, ugly, unkempt hair, and without makeups. And she came on stage. And the moment she came on stage, they looked at her, they said, why are you here? In their mind, they said, why are you here in the first place? Who gave you the opened the door for you to be here? You shouldn't be here. There's nothing in that you don't look like anyone who should be here. So, but they couldn't say anything. They just looked, and everybody's face just dropped, and they just looked at her and said, okay, so let's see here what you have to sing. And the moment she opened her mouth to sing, as she began to sing, everyone was astonished at her wonderful voice. The judges almost became ashamed of themselves. Now she's a big international star, superstar. She's a superstar. She's called Susan Boyle. So sometimes that is, as human beings, we need to really pinch ourselves and say, and so this, happens all the time. What about, you must have heard of Steve Hawkins. Yes. Yeah, you know about Stephen Hawkins, yes. Right? His body is no good because of disease, right? But his brain is excellent. Supposing you and I were to meet Steve Hawkins somewhere. We don't know him, we just meet him somewhere. And maybe he's just in the wheelchair, standing close to me, and I'm doing something. And then he said, oh, can I help you? I'll just look at him and says, I don't need your help, right? I'm most likely say, I don't need your help. Why? Because of how his condition. But there's a person who can really, really do something good. And so that is where basically goodness, we need to goodness, a good person respects other people, not because of what they have, not because of whether they are beautiful or not beautiful. It's just being good. It's just being good. So that is and polite and cautious to other people. And so that's one of the things, that goodness brings in our lives. And that is why God brings about the fruit of the Spirit. The character of goodness should be in our lives. People make impact in different stages in their lives. I've seen people who never did anything really fantastic or really unusual until they are after the age of 50. It's like, boom, things begin to happen in their lives. That has never happened before. I've seen people who are like Susan Boyle that I was talking about, was 48 years old when she was discovered. There are people who became, famous when they were kids, or when they were teenagers, or when they were young adults. But there are other people who probably be discovered, maybe begin to do great things when they are 60. So people make different kinds of impact at different, times in their lives. So we must respect people. We must honor people. Because God honors them. We must honor them. They are made in the image and the likeness of God. Another thing that good people do is to be grateful. We have to be grateful to men, and we have to be grateful to God. If somebody does something good for me, it is God who enabled that person to do that which is good. And so we must be grateful to people and to God as well. Somebody had a dream. Somebody had a dream of having gone to heaven. And so he was being shown around heaven by the Apostle Peter. So Peter would take him from one section of heaven and to another, and he was showing him some room. So they went into a certain room, and the room was full of activity. Large hall, it was full of activity. And there were angels all over the place. They were busy, doing something. And then the man in the dream asked Peter, said, what is all this? What is happening here? So Peter said, this is a place where is called receiving. When people pray on earth, when you guys pray on earth, all your requests come to this place. And so this is the place where your prayers and requests are processed. He said, okay, I say. Then they went on to another place. And then the place was full of another activity, angels all over the place, busy doing something or the other. And then the man asked, what are they doing here? What is all this all about? Then he said, this place is our shipping base. He said, this is a place where after the processing is done, this is where all the prayer requests and the answers to people's prayers are shipped back, sent back to people on earth. So he nodded his head. And then they went on to the next place. It was a small room. It was a small room, and there was one angel there. And the angel there looked bored, and there's nothing for him to do. He was just sitting there, as if he was going to feel sleepy or something. And then this man asked him and said, what is this place? Then he said that this place is known as acknowledgement. When people receive, the things are processed, and then they shipped to them. And then this is a place for them to, when people acknowledge, in other words, are grateful and thank God for the thing that they received, this is where it comes. And so the place was empty. The place was empty. When people pray and receive something, they don't care about giving thanks to God. They don't, the same thing happening in this world. If you will look back, you probably see people whom you have helped in the past, or that needed to, be grateful. They don't need to do anything big, just to be grateful. What does that room that is empty, what do people need to do? Get back to God and say, thank you. I received what you sent to me. I received my prayer answered. Thank you. And the place is empty. So good people are grateful people. They are grateful to people, and they are grateful to God. Good people also think of others. They are considerate. They are very considerate. They look at people and say, oh, this should happen, this should not happen. I should not do this, I should do this. So they are considerate. Not just the whole world doesn't just revolve around them. Some people think that the whole world is just about them, revolves around them. They don't care about other people. So good people do care about other people. They are considerate, and they are not self-centered. So they feel for other people. Good people are also responsible and reliable. They are responsible and reliable. A good person, when they say something to you, you can trust what they have said. They are reliable. You can trust their word. Whatever they say, they'll do it. You can just have a good sleep, without bothering. You don't have to have sleepless night because, would that happen? Would it not happen? No. They are trusted. The work is done. The job is done. So that is how good people are. They are reliable. They are responsible. They are always willing to learn. They keep the time. They keep the word. They keep the time, and they learn. They know how to communicate to people. And so these are all the qualities of, some of the qualities of goodness. And that is why the Bible is telling us about the fruit of the Spirit that we need to grow in us. Some of these qualities of goodness may not all be there or in full measure, but we need to practice and grow in them so that we can become good people in every area of our life. That is it. So that anything we do, we are basically demonstrating that we are made in the image and the likeness of God. That we are demonstrating that we are the children of God. We are made in the image and the likeness of God. And that is, something that others can follow. We can go about talking a lot of gospel to people, but if our life doesn't speak the gospel to them, there's no way that, it will make an impact. It's our life that will speak to them. There is a saying that action speaks louder than words. So our actions ought to, speak to people rather than go about, talk. Yes, one day, when When the person's life, is looked into, it's just empty. It's opposite of what they are, talking about, talking all the time. So we must pray that God will give us that quality of goodness in our lives.